Welcome to Osquery office hours for the week of Tuesday, April 14th. What's first on the agenda there, Seth?
First up is any PRs people want to bring up. I tossed PR 6352 in because I felt like that one needed a little bit of discussion, but this one was about adding statuses and statements to distributed query results. And it seems like the original contributor on it and many of the people here weren't sure if the statements should really be included. So I don't know if we wanted to think any more about that. I'm kind of not sure where to go on that. And I feel like I didn't want to let this one hang out forever.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I think we do just need to make a decision here and move forward, because at the least, I think it sounded like last time we met, there's pretty unanimous agreement that the status messages were useful. So I guess the remaining question is whether we are interested in including the SQL statement. Does that sound right?
I think so. I mean, I guess probably my biggest concern is that SQL statements can get very, very, very large. On the other hand, so can results. So I don't know, but it feels a little bit weird to it feels fine to include, a one-line select X from Y. It starts feeling pretty ugly to include a 1,000-line join pivot monstrosity. But maybe I'm wrong about that.
Have other folks in the room had a look at this PR? So the idea is that it does two things. One, it adds any error message that was not any error message that was generated by the results, but any error that was actually returned while the query was run, so that we can get some feedback for why a query was unsuccessful if it was not. Previously, you'd only get an integer 0, 1 success failure, which it sounded like last time we met there's unanimous agreement. And now the thing that we need to decide is the other proposed change is to include the text of the SQL statement that was executed for that query. And I think to summarize the discussion on the issue, some of us think that the server ought to just know what SQL is executed given the name of the query, because presumably the server told the client to execute that and has that query stored and can just pull it up. So the question is it worthwhile to include these extra bytes in every response to a distributed query request that would provide that SQL when it's likely already available to the server?
Is it all included when something happens and an error is generated?
No, I believe it's included anytime.
I mean, it looks like it is useful when debugging things.
Are you implying the suggestion that maybe if it was only included in error conditions, then maybe that's like a middle ground?
I mean, it is fine as it is right now for me. Though I do remember a couple of users that were really worried when I added a couple of new fields to audit, because they already had quite a lot of traffic generated by Osquery. So yeah, I don't know. But I mean, it's really useful. That for sure.
Would it make sense to make it optional at this point, so that yeah, at least if you need that information and you don't have it in that moment on the server for whatever reason, or you are fine with it, we can have it. I mean, I know that the end result may be that no one's enables it, but it is such a problem to have it in the code as an option and eventually choose later for something else.
Yeah, I mean, besides for the proliferation of flags, that sounds fine to me.
I'd kind of rather we just picked a reasonable thing and did it.
Yeah, I saw a teak put into the chat, not necessary, already available. Would you like to make any more comment about that?
Sorry, so what I was referring to is if the caller already makes the query and knows about it, like I don't see a reason why this should be there.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel. I mean, I think that it's potential to, I mean, it's obviously varies quite a bit depending on what query you run, but it seems like there's potential to dramatically increase the number of bytes that we're pushing across the wire for some data that will be the same for every host that pushes it and that is already available on the server.
That makes sense, but I was wondering how easy it is. I mean, if you return the error output along with the query that caused it, you basically store it so you can later look at it again without having to reference the current query pack that may be different than what you were running when the incident happened. So
Sorry to cut you off there, but this is in reference to live queries.
Oh, I see. Yeah, then probably your reasoning makes more sense.
Do you have any thoughts on including it only in the error condition, sort of omitting it for normal state and then including it for error? Like, is that a middle ground?
Yeah, I mean, maybe we should just kind of punt that idea back to the PR and see what the author thinks. Because, yeah, I mean, I guess the thing that I would like to avoid, if possible, is just increasing in the general case, potentially dramatically increasing the number of bytes. So to me, that sounds like a reasonable compromise if it's useful for them. But on the other hand, it sounds like maybe what they want to do is not have to keep track of what the query was on the server at all. And so that may not address their issue. But I think that maybe we can move it discussion back to the issue there and see where we can get.
I will try and dump all this into the issue and see if I can kick some conversation along there.
Awesome. Thanks, Seth.
I mean, honestly, maybe a thing to do is just to split this PR into the two features. We can merge the obvious one and then argue about the other one and potentially never merge it.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me as well. Like, let's merge the one that makes sense, because I think there was unanimous agreement that it was a quite helpful change.
I assume this is something from the Trail of Bits folks. So I'm assuming we're done talking about this issue right now. So I'm jumping on to the next two. Next two are, I believe, added here from the Trail of Bits folks, which are the event batching support in Windows tables and container access from tables on Linux, which I think were both pending reviews.
Yeah, I know we're carrying these forward from, I think, last week. We mentioned them. There haven't been any updates to those PRs that I'm aware of, but the reviews, we were still looking for them. I think we identified a reviewer for the Windows tables, maybe Nick? He's here on the call, right? Nick's here. He's muted.
We can't hear him through that beard.
It's short right now, relatively speaking.
Yeah, that's a sanitary COVID beard, right?
It is indeed. I can definitely take a look at those. What?
For you, I think we're looking for a review on the Windows tables one, since it does touch a lot of the code that was originally something you did, right?
Sure. Yep.
The PR is pretty large. Maybe if you want, we can do like a walkthrough of the changes. You and Alessandro can he can show you what he did as a way just to kind of like make this a little bit easier to review.
Yeah, this one's been on my to-do list for some time. I'm sorry, I haven't gotten into it just because it's been so long. I haven't.
Yeah, and it's
had
big.
a good set of time, but I'll make some time for it this week so I can sit down with it and go through it. Alessandro, I could just hit you up on Slack and we can try to set something up out of bound if I need
sure.
extra help.
I think it would be good. I mean, just
sorry about that, man.
Just to kind of give you a walkthrough on it, and you don't have to make like a review on the spot, but if it gets you refreshed on what the changes are, and
Definitely.
just eases you in, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Alessandro, if you could set up a time with him.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, great. We've been testing this, and we had a client test it, so I think more testing is good too, but this would be more of the code view.
Got it on my to-do list, so I'll make some time for it now. Sorry about that, guys.
That's okay. Thank you.
I see that the other PR is the container access on Linux, which I had previously approved, and looks like maybe it just needs a reapproval after the rebase.
Yeah, I can say, thank you for the previous approval. I've updated it so that bug is no longer present, and so it builds fine.
Great. Well, that's a nice way to solve that. Cool. Yeah. I'll take another look at that and give it the approval. And next time, feel free to just ping me on Slack to take a look at something like that. I just have a hard time keeping up with the notifications.
Yeah, I was personally looking at the release process, so yeah.
Cool.
But
well, thanks for doing that.
Yeah, it'd be great to have that one in there because that one blocks a couple of other draft PRs we have.
Sounds like that's probably going to be an exciting thing in, I don't know, what, 4.4.0 maybe? So it'll be fun.
Yeah, we would like to get all that container-related tables that we've been working on. We'd like to get that all merged in a release, not apparently 4.3, but at least on the agenda.
Right. I mean, it sounds like Zach's happy to basically reapprove this, so then they'll all start merging, and we'll bump the release number.
Well, I just mean because we were planning to write a blog post about it, about the batch of work that we did to add better container support for Linux tables.
Awesome. This is great. And I mean, I think that figuring out what the story is with Osquery and containers has been like a sort of vision-oriented conversation and potential issue that has been on our radar for a while. So it's great to see some progress being made on these fronts. So thank you, guys.
Great.
Next up. Oh, I guess any other PRs, issues?
So we already mentioned this, but with back out of the project, we can simplify the CMake we have quite a lot. Because when Stefanon and I wrote this, we had to emulate several things that back offered, like namespaces for include files, and also namespaces within the project itself. So we had to use crazy long names for functions and so on. So in the future, we will be able to simplify this and make it more modern CMake-like, other than what it is right now.
I liked one of the maybe artifacts. I'm not sure what the right term is, but the thing that I like is for each target defined in CMake, the include availability is very well defined. It's very explicit. So instead of having these overly broad sets of include directories, it's a specific include target that is either generated from that CMake or another part of the code. I'm not sure if that was the original intention because I'm not very familiar with modern CMake, or if that was something that had to be sort of ported over because that's what Buck provides.
Yeah, we had to make it work so we could build it from the back project. It was kind of forced. It is, however, causing a couple of issues. The first one is that the including space is not really that isolated as it seems. As one target is linked to the other, it will gradually collect many other includes that are not related. And it is also causing some issues to whoever uses things like CTEX or like VS Code or pretty much anything that attempts to parse the include tree, because we have to create symbolic links that will eventually kill those processes due to memory and or CPU usage. And it is not always possible to disable this functionality from the tool itself.
That's true. I forgot about that side effect. So the positive positive experience is the dependencies that you have are very explicit in the target definition, but the negatives is that any sort of integrated environment becomes quite difficult to configure.
Yeah, there is also one additional issue in that the folder structure on disk doesn't work until we run CMake to create all the hierarchy.
Yep.
So if we were to use things like external tools, they would not work without having pass from CMake first.
So maybe I didn't fully get one of the passages, but I think we can still have each target have defined its own include directories, because that's what you normally do. Probably you will not have a target that represents only include directories. It can be used, it cannot be used. It's a matter of organization. Sometimes it's excessive, sometimes it's not. I think, though, what it's important is if you want separation and do not publish or try to include a directory with include files that you don't want to see, you have to create a proper folder structure. So you have a folder where there are only public headers, and then you can publish that folder through CMake. So instead of having something done automatically through links or through whatever methods like Buck used, you actually do that manually. This again has all the benefits that Alessandro talked about, because there's a one-to-one match between what's actually on disk and what the IDE or tool sees.
I'm not a Buck expert, though it seemed like this including space feature in Buck was implemented more as some kind of refactor tool without that you could use without actually moving everything around in your source tree.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, however, if there is any kind of issue related with the private fork within Facebook, if there are some requirements there, we can I mean, it's not something that will happen right now, this refactor. So we can discuss what is required for the Python fork to keep working without causing major, disruption.
Yeah, the most disruptive changes would be moving around the file structure, moving around the C++ implementation files. I don't think moving the headers is going to be very disruptive.
Yeah, I think that the highest priority thing right now is just even if we keep the including spaces, it would be nice to start refactoring names and keep things shorter in function names and so on.
Anything else on the CMake bug stuff? Okay, it's kind of the end of an era in a certain way. Next item on agenda, 4.3.0 release. Stefano has been driving this. Thank you, Stefano.
And also thanks, Teddy.
Always thanks, Teddy. I don't know if there's anything to talk about on this, but beta channel, their beta packages in core, and I think, yeah, they're now 4.3.0 packages and they're pending being signed. So that's good. Did anyone test the MSI one? Okay. Probably we should try and test the MSI one. I say into the void. I can probably fire up a VM and install that.
I can play around with it later on tonight too. When I'm looking at Alessandro's, or at least sometime this week, I can pull it down and mess around with it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't do much, but I can probably just install it, and either it'll install or it won't install. I think Teddy's probably signing the Linux and Mac ones. Excuse me, just the Mac ones. We don't sign Linux. And Nick, are you up for signing the MSI tonight?
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so those are signed.
Nice.
The Linux ones, the repo signs it, and the repos are staged locally. So I just have to press a button to sync them to S3. So the next step is publishing the change to the website and then publishing the website.
So really quick, for the signing, especially on the MSI, if we're going to make the publication to the website, did the binaries inside of the MSI get signed?
No. So what happens with the website is usually like myself or someone else runs the script and it populates all the data except for the hash for the Windows MSI. And then you come in later and update that. Yeah.
Sure. All right, just double checking, because if I go through the process of building and signing the binary, it's going to involve, I'll rebuild the whole thing because I have to sign the binaries as well. Like I can't just sign the MSI, I got to sign what's inside of it.
I think this is sort of true for the Mac ones, but if I remember right, Teddy usually unpacks, signs, and repacks.
Yeah, it's essentially that. I was just asking because, like, if there's already an MSI floating around, I probably won't use that.
Are you using the CMake build process then?
Yes, I will be using the CMake build process to do this. I'm just saying that typically I run the CMake build process, re-sign it, rerun the CMake build process, and then the output of that gets signed. So that way they're double signed. The MSI is signed as well as binaries inside of it.
As it should be.
Right.
Yeah.
Just a heads up on that issue that has a lot of discussion. I think it's titled build sign something else, but in there I posted a link to the script that unpacks the package, signs the Makos, and then repacks and signs the package. So if anyone else wants to do that too.
Talk to me when I finish getting Apple certs.
Absolutely.
And I'm super excited to see 4.3.0 go, so that sounds great. I don't know if there's much else to talk about here. So let's see. GitHub, next ones are sort of structural, foundational, always fun. GitHub has a new pricing structure. So earlier today, GitHub announced that they were expanding the GitHub free thing to include some of the functionality on Teams. And this has caused several of us to be like, oh, does this mean we can finally change what we're doing? Osquery is still on Facebook's legacy bronze plan. And at various points in time, I have gotten communication from GitHub saying that, yes, they can move us to open source. Having just dug through my email, the last one I got was on March 4th, so about a month ago. And I just sent them email saying, hey, what's going on here? And I think Teddy also just sent them email saying, hey, what's going on here? So hopefully GitHub might do something for us.
I guess one thing to point out is while our billing page says we're on the bronze plan, it seems to me that we may now have access to workflows or actions or whatever they call it, which we didn't previously.
So as I understand it, so GitHub has a like whole constellation of features, and those features get rolled into their plans on some weird hierarchy. Actions did roll into our plan as soon as Actions went out of beta. It went live everywhere. The last thing I noticed that we didn't have was the triage role, which may or may not have rolled into bronze at this point. So I believe the billing page is correct in that, Facebook is still paying for this on a weird legacy plan, and I'd love to have that not be true anymore.
Well, at least I'm not sure when Actions went out of beta, but at least as of like about a month ago, I think, we did not have access to Actions, and the error message was that we were on a legacy billing plan in which they weren't available. As of today, we seem to have them. Additionally, if you look at the payment information for our supposed bronze plan, it says that the last payment was a $25 payment that failed in August of 2015. So I wouldn't be sure that, one, we're paying for anything, and two, really what GitHub thinks that we're on. So I guess to me, the biggest thing is, are there features that we want that we may be able to get access to now? I mean, to me, it's a new discovery that we have Actions, which means that we can automate the deployment of the Osquery site, for example, which we've tried to do numerous times and been blocked by the lack of Actions. As far as features that we're using, like enforce 2FA, that checkbox still exists for us, and it's still checked. It seems that we still have required reviewers, so that's good. So the best course of action may be to take no action at this point. On the other hand, I think the biggest features that folks that have been concerned about are required reviews and the enforce 2FA. And according to the pricing page, if you scroll down, those are both available for public repositories with the new free plan.
I agree. The big feature that we're missing right now is just the more granular access controls for Teams, which would allow people to add tags and make modifications to issues without also having commit access. But we've hacked around that by just trusting people. And if someone wants to be in the community management role, we give them access to commit to the repository too. So right, so no action is actually pretty good, but I can answer the question of like how is this being paid for. The bronze plan applies to like if you can consider like a plan that overlaps many organizations, so you pay once and then you just like opt in several organizations. So that's currently what we're doing. So we're on this like negotiated price for however many organizations Facebook has.
I see. So yeah, I mean, I guess it's an exciting development that we can do actions and automate the website deploy, and that's something that I can work on soon. And then I guess it would be nice to understand better whether the new free tier may support that kind of access control that Teddy was describing about issues. I see shaking head. So
no, it explicitly says that required reviewers is part of the next tier. So I think whether or not it supports it.
No, you have to scroll down into the pricing page.
It says both things. The question is, which of them do you believe?
Well, it's clear lower down on the pricing page. It clearly says required reviews are available for public repositories and the free tier. Even though at the top it says that that's a feature of the other ones, I think that the differentiation is that that's something that you can only get on a private repository if you pay.
Nice. That's awesome.
So I guess as far as I'm concerned, like a fine outcome of office hours this week on this item is like no action necessary, but I think that we ought to dig a little bit and see whether we will get more things that are helpful for us by moving plans.
I'm under the impression we're still in Facebook's thing, and I think there is a long-term desire to have that not be true anymore by any means possible. And if it's, so like at some point we should be not in Facebook's thing. And I mean, Facebook's super generous and kind of willing to just float things for a little while, but I think roughly once a year a conversation happens.
Cool. Well, thanks, y'all. Let's just bookmark that and come back to that later.
All right. Sounds like both Kedian and I have attempted to push that ball forward a bit. Yeah, I know. We'll see if anything happens on that. And I think that if there are things you want to do with workflows, there is very little reason not to try doing them. I mean, I don't bring it up on Slack. There are probably some things where we might be like, no, let's not put secrets and credentials there, but I'm not convinced I care much about the website. So the other sort of foundation thing that I wanted to tell people is I have been on a very, very long, very slow process of trying to get Osquery code signing certificates so that we can stop using Facebook's code signing certificates. And last week, we hit a great milestone in this, which is that we now have a DUNS number so that we can now get an Apple account. So this is pretty exciting. And I expect to try and get us an Apple developer account this week. And then I'll start trying to tackle Windows code signing. There's a whole lot of unknowns and like, okay, once we get certs, how do we use them and how do we want to bake them into CI and how do we manage those secrets? But like, I'm sure we can solve all of that. And I'm just really excited that we have a DUNS number now. So
yeah, they can't take that away from us, right? It's a one-time thing, right?
It's a one-time thing.
As far as costs, I see there's a question here about costs. And I think the Apple developer account would cost us $100 a year.
Probably not. So
is there an open source?
There's an open source one. My suspicion is that we have to This has fallen out of my head a little bit because it has been such a long process to get us a DUNS number. My recollection is probably we sign up for an account and then we go through the process of getting it granted as an open source or nonprofit. So I'll certainly do that as part of the, all the other bits, but everything had to start with the DUNS number. DUNS number got granted on Thursday or Friday, I believe. And there was a sort of mandatory 5-day waiting period before we could do anything with Apple. So I'll submit stuff to Apple this week. And other things that happened somewhat as a fallout of that is I made an Osquery Twilio account so that I could create an Osquery phone number. So we now have a phone number, at least until I decide we don't need it anymore. But if anyone cares, we've got that. And I also have our legal foundation PDF incorporation documents, which are in the 1Password vaults, if anyone else happens to find that they need those. That's about it.
Thank you for
Can we call you?
yeah, can we call you?
I mean, if you really want to, I could look the number up. I stuck it on the DUNS form. It's the only place it exists. Anyone want to raise anything else for this meeting?
I found the fee waivers page. I added it to the notes for the Apple ID.
Yeah. Yep. I'll finish running the riddle trail and I'll link this to the foundation ticket too. It took a really long time to get a DUNS number. I'm sorry, everyone. I think it's probably been a 6-month process.
Thank you for your persistence there.
So,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Happy to have that done.
So are we at the anything else part of the meeting?
I think so.
Is there anyone here from Upticks that would like to talk about the HTTP events PR? It's a no. Okay. Well,
Did they submit a PR recently? Is that what you're referring to?
yeah.
6366.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I'll go add that to the notes since we're talking about it. Back up in the PRs section.
So this is probably one that does merit some conversation.
Yeah.
Not quite sure how to have that conversation without Upticks being here, though.
Fair enough. But they don't come to the meetings, so it's a goal, right, of ours to merge their fork as much as possible back into Osquery upstream. But this is the one that they chose to submit first, and I'm not sure it's the most mergeable.
I have some concerns about it as well, and I don't wholly know how to address them.
I might suggest that this be limited to an extension, not because it violates a rule of the design, but, well, maybe it does, I don't know. But it's attempting to use promiscuous packet capture and parse them in a process running as root. It's just not a security decision I would like us to make. And for that reason, I think it should be done in a process that deprivileges itself before handling so much untrusted data. Does anyone agree, or?
That's basically what we did with our DNS extension table. For the same reason, we ended up using a different process so we could drop the privileges.
How do you feel about sort of handling the audit event stream or any of the places we do log processing or kind of, you
There's
know,
a bit more structure that is trusted from events generated by a system component like audit.
or I mean, any of the places we're basically talking to OS APIs or the file system, which potentially are all user data, and we run into like endless UTF-8 and binary issues. Sort of, is parsing PCAP any worse?
It's a little bit worse since processes from other computers could send you packet data.
And so my reactions to this PR are sort of split along a couple of different things. And I said some of this in the PR. So I also want to note the security of PCAP for meetings. One of them is that this PR seems to be doing several really different things, all under the guise of one table, and that feels like an anti-pattern to me. In the case of HTTP, it's using it's extracting the headers out of the HTTP packet. In the case of HTTPS, it's taking a JA3 fingerprint. And that sort of bimodal thing feels very weird to me. Like I'd rather either see that as two tables or something. And then I have these other questions about, like, I don't know how I feel about dropping Osquery, like dropping a NIC into promiscuous mode. Like that feels like a pretty substantial change to me. And I'm not totally opposed to creating network capture functionality, but it feels like that's a thing that like should get gated a bit. You know, that's like a, you know, the disable promiscuous mode equals false or something flag, right? And then like, what does that look like? And maybe relatedly, like, does this fit better inside the BPF frameworks that we're working on? So I don't know, like some of it feels a little bit kind of like, well, why are we blurring header extraction from JA3 fingerprinting? And, you know, can this be split? Can JA3 fingerprinting be moved to some of the open socket tables or something? What kinds of configuration and reasonableness are there for parsing HTTP headers? That your security concern is another great one I hadn't thought of. And then both Alessandro and I noticed that this doesn't correctly handle pipeline code, pipeline HTTP requests. So there's sort of like many questions about this code.
Well, I mean, the appropriate place, I guess, is in the PR itself, but to the extent that there were differences in opinion, those would be good to have here. Op6 is not here to advocate for themselves, but we can, I guess, document the discussion points and invite them to comment, right?
I tried in the PR. I think Alessandro did as well. I guess, does anyone want to say anything for or against any of the things I said? This PR in general?
So my concern is that I would like not to have the contributor waste time on something that we already know we don't want to approve later on when this is ready. So I think we should decide whether this is something we can accept, given a reasonable code quality matching our requirements, or whether we want to discard this kind of functionality and move it inside an extension right now. Because, I mean, without the proper reassembly, no amount of code reviews will fix the fact that this will still always miss anything that is not just a simple C URL command line initiated session.
I'm just trying to catch up here, but Mike, can I clarify if I'm understanding your concern correctly? Is your concern that parsing the network packets as a root level process opens up an attack surface for potential privilege escalation or even remote code execution as a root user. Is that what you're implying there?
There are many issues. So other than what Seth said about the separation of concerns, where there are multiple functionalities merged together, there is also a security issue. But more importantly, there is no packet reassembly implemented, and there is no plan to implement it, which means that when a keep alive connection is used to send multiple HTTP requests, the table will never pick it up. And if there is any kind of network issue and there is retransmission happening, the table will still capture data that is not meant to be shown inside the TCP conversation. So there is a high potential that the data inside this table will never be correct, unless this is a really simple request done like using a command line tool, like a curl or maybe wget. I mean, I think that anything else like a browser or apt-get will not be parsable by this publisher.
So, Alessandro, if I'm understanding correctly, your concerns are about the correctness of the data that would be returned by this table.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's one thing. But can I also clarify, what the concern was from Mike, in terms of, like, Mike, you consider this like possibly unacceptable attack surface?
Possibly, yes. I understand that Seth, raises the point that it's not the only user controllable data that Osquery handles. I think it is
more.
Yeah, I think it might be going further down that path. Most, if not all, of the Osquery sources of information are mitigated or mediated by the kernel delivering an event through an API, right? So,
plist.
Okay. So the majority then, and this doesn't make the concern invalid. It actually makes it just means that maybe we should consider this more broadly. Maybe we should add a consideration to our design constraints for future tables, if not revisiting existing tables. But when we handle arbitrary data as root, we should be careful. And this is handling more arbitrary data, and we could be very careful about it, and it wouldn't be a problem if we do it correctly. But that's the classic mistake in C++.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all know doing it correctly is difficult to near impossible in 100% of cases.
I agree with you, Mike. I'm just trying to pick apart exactly what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing that I hear from you, though, Mike, is that this is a way that perhaps an attacker can know that Osquery is running on the system, and now through some unrelated network connection can send data that could potentially compromise the Osquery process.
So, I mean,
I don't think that's really a problem. Maybe detecting that Osquery runs this way is possible, right? Like through some side channel of timing or something. But no, my concern was the same as when you run Wireshark, and there's been many vulnerabilities in Wireshark, in their HTTP parsers even. The more you do with arbitrary data handled from the promiscuous network socket, then the more risk you open yourself to, and that's all.
So I maybe want to, if I look at this and I go back to the sort of merging of functionalities, right? I would love to see JA3 fingerprinting in Osquery. I don't totally know if it fits, because I don't know if you could do JA fingerprinting without being promiscuous. And as soon as you get into promiscuous, I start feeling kind of iffy about it. But parsing HTTP headers feels like a very different direction to me. So I'm kind of curious about, like, is there a feasible route? Like, if this functionality was split, or let me say that differently. I think Alessandro's point was that irrespective of the implementation, if we don't want the functionality, we should basically just do not want the PR. Like, there's no point to arguing about implementation if fundamentally we don't want it.
I mean, I agree with that. So I guess the question becomes, how are we going to make the decision about whether this is something that, with the correct implementation, could get merged?
I think we're looking at the people who make that decision, Zach.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm hesitant to do that without hearing Uptick's representation of, their thoughts on the concerns that people are bringing up. So maybe we should just ask them to come to the next office hour so we can talk about it.
Yeah, I think we should make sure that our decisions are as, what's the opposite of arbitrary?
Transparent, consistent.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, based in policy if possible, because we don't want to sound like we make up our reasons for refusing a PR ad hoc. The design rules of Osquery, we're good. Maybe there's a opportunity here to clarify something. That's, I guess, something I'm suggesting.
Well, and let me be clear that I would like Upticks to feel welcome to contribute back to Osquery. And I think, I wish it was something that we were like, yep, merge it, as the first sort of contribution that we've seen from them in a while. But, it sounds like we're in a much more difficult position than that. So I think taking the utmost care to handle this in a way that helps them understand that we do want their contributions, to me, seems very worthwhile.
Yeah, we at their conference, we met with them, and we were honest when we said we really would like some of the work that they've done to be merged. And I even wrote down in my notes here the features that they discussed in their presentation. There were a handful of things that I thought could be upstreamed. This was not one of them. I don't know if we can say, hey, about those other ones, could you open PRs for those? But, inviting PRs specifically for the desired behavior might be a way to encourage them. We want to encourage them.
Do you feel like you have a channel where you can follow up with them on that? Can you be like, hey, we saw you open this. This is a tough PR for us. Like, what about these other ideas we talked about? I don't know if you have contact.
Jumped into their channel on Osquery before.
For conflict of interest reasons, I attempt to avoid that channel.
Because it's too open?
No, because I work for Collide.
Well, okay, yes. Okay, well,
I can hold those more separate in
yeah.
PRs, but it's harder for me in Slack.
It was Zach and I that approached them.
Oh, nice. I've talked a little bit with I can't pronounce his name. Giuliani?
Oh, Guillaume?
Is that how I should be pronouncing it?
It's what is his name? Geppetto?
Yeah.
22 or something? Yeah, it's Guillaume.
Okay, thank you.
Well, Mike, what do you think if you and I drop into their channel and just say like, hey, we're excited to have you back engaging again.
Yeah.
This one is kind of difficult, so can you try and make it to the next office hours so that we can, talk about it more and try and come to a decision of whether it's something that we can see in Osquery, and then maybe also suggest other contributions of theirs that we know that are, would be very productive for the project, since it sounds like you've got those noted.
Looks like my notes aren't as good as I remembered, but their talk is up, so we can revisit it. Yeah, but they were definitely like, they enumerated the things that they had done for the agent. So yeah, our action item here should be to specifically contact Upticks, invite them to office hours again, and to request those PRs that they haven't filed.
We should try to encourage people to use blueprints so that we can define requirements way before code is written down.
We should, but this
fine.
this code was written. They had already done it.
Oh, I see.
I mean,
we assume.
There was some effort, I guess, to make it mergeable with the deltas since the fork. But yeah, the functionality that they wrote was written. So they brought it as is.
Yeah, so I think presumably there was, since they're still on 3.2 or something like that, there may have been non-trivial effort to make it mergeable with the current master of Osquery. So, I think ideally we would save everyone some time by making at least a quick conversation about, is this easily mergeable if the code looks good or not, before anyone puts in the time to ready something for a pull request.
Sure. Okay. Well, then that's what we'll do. We'll ask them to open either draft PRs or blueprint issues for those.
So poking around a little bit though, writing a new table pulling a table from Osquery 3 to Osquery 4 is relatively straightforward. The table code is the same. Most of the differences in the build system. So even if they could open a blueprint, they could open a PR that doesn't have a working build system and just has the table implementation if they want to be like, hey, what do you think of this? Like it's kind of up to them. I don't feel the need to have like a formal blueprint to talk about. Like I'm happy to just look at a bare table implementation and whatever's easy for them.
We don't really have a template for. Blueprints are more or less unstructured discussion posts.
But whatever's easy for them, right? If they would rather just open a PR with a table in it, like that's cool.
Yeah,
I'm happy to do whatever makes it easy for them. I'm happy to review.
Yeah, I agree. I open pull requests all the time because I'm okay if they get closed in case they're not accepted. However, blueprints, they are generally more structured. So if it is a controversial thing to implement, like HTTP events, then it is easy to have this put down into a more readable format that can be more easily shared and discussed about compared to a table implementation.
But I guess the part of what I'm not sure of is, right, Upticks is generally already has implementations of things. So Upticks is not looking for feedback on their architectural choices, I assume, right? They're not like, hey, I want to write an HTTP events table. How would I do it? What do you think? What are your concerns, right? They're basically like, look, we made this thing. Do you want it?
Sure.
Well, yeah, we want to meet in the middle and compromise to merge. I don't think it's a take it or leave it like our way or don't take, you know what I mean? It's not like a our way or the highway kind of thing.
I don't know because they haven't really engaged in discussion on their PRs.
Yeah. I want to believe they're making the PRs in a good faith effort, because it really is for everyone's best interest. But they might just be busy.
I assume it's good faith, but I work for a company, right? And like my time is weirdly split between working on commercial products and working on our open source things and Osquery. And it's a little different for us because none of Collide's agent is closed source. It's entirely open source. So basically anything I do in the agent land is all landing in open source. But I'm very sympathetic and familiar with the tension of, I have a business, I just need to get a feature done. I might like to get it into Osquery, but if either it's hard for me to do it in C or it's going to take too long, or I don't know if we want it, I'm just going to write it in Go and Launcher and get it out the door. And that tends to be very fast. And and Upticks almost certainly has the same tension. And I don't think there's no negative commentary here, right? Like they need a thing for their business.
All democracies move slowly. That's the downside of having multiple opinions.
Yeah. So like when I don't see them engaging, I don't interpret it as bad faith. I just interpret it as this is the thing they wrote to meet whatever their product goal was, and they'd love to share it with us, but they may not have time to convince us of its beauty. And they're on to the next.
Sure. And that's why we're going to engage with them. So
I still wonder if there's a way to use JA3 without needing to be in promiscuous mode. I'm pretty sure every time I've looked at this, JA3 really requires basically promiscuous mode or man in the middle, like all the connections.
I don't think it is running promiscuous mode. It is still, however, capturing packets destined to this machine where it is running on. So yeah, it's a little less worse, but yeah, of course,
not really.
To generate packets against the machine to attempt to break it. So yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe, so you mentioned the BPF framework. Depending on how, so I haven't tested this. However, there might be a chance to inspect some of the traffic sent out through the socket and attempt to parse this kind of data from BPF and see if we can. So I have no idea how these things work. So I won't promise anything, but we can look into it if we have some time. I'm refactoring a couple of things in eBPF Lab, so it becomes easier to use. But then I will start refactoring the pull request. I open, fix the test, and try to get things merged.
And I think we conclude that like nothing in the old BPF implementations had to be carried forward.
No, we were going to drop it, I think. There was no work done on this yet.
But no, it's fine. I'm just whatever's easier for you. It sounds like.
Yeah. So the actual problem I have right now is that I didn't think this through when implementing. So I was trying to adopt a general approach for all the system calls. Then I wanted to make this more generic, so it could be used as general purpose function tracer, so we could trace programs. And I realized that how system calls are handled through serializers is not really well thought out, because it's not always easy to tell how a function works based on the signature of the function. For example, when passing a socket structure, you don't know from the signature that there is also a size field. And serializers, the way I implemented them, are not really easy to extend to all possible functions. So instead, I'm using a more fine-tuned approach where you define the prototype of the function and its behavior. So it's not as pointing this against a trace point definition and have it work out of the box. However, I can still generate some generic handlers for unknown system calls or trace points. So yeah, as soon as this is done, we can start removing the draft from pull request and have people review things. Oh, and we can maybe look into defining custom tracers. Some people have mentioned about sending events directly through the logger. Maybe we can start looking into this once the tracer is done, if anyone cares.
Okay. Anyone have anything else they want to bring up? If not, I hope everyone's time in isolation is adequate. And here we all are.
May you all have toilet paper to last.
Yeah, all the best to you guys. Thanks,
The
everyone.
Hanukkah miracle.
The roll never ends.
Yes. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
See ya.
Thank
Bye.
you, guys. Bye.